Things were going downhill.
Yeah.
They were.
Yikes.
Brian took off his shirt.
I will.
There are no doubts.
I certainly will. We'll get some ratings for this pitch.
Oh my god. Alright, welcome everyone. I hope this is working. I apologize for the technical difficulties. This obviously isn't how we wanted things to go down on our very first broadcast, but it did, and it is, and I don't even know if anyone out there can hear me right now, so...
One of the guests needs to turn your YouTube
how
off.
we wanted things to go down on our very first broadcast, but it did, and it is, and I don't even know if anyone out there can hear me right now, so I'm not sure it's working.
One of the guests needs to turn your YouTube off.
I've got the page up right now.
Oh man, I'm getting a lot of echo.
It did,
A lot of
and
echo.
it is,
This is what
and
hell
I don't
is
even
like.
know if anyone out there can hear me right now, so I'm not sure it's working.
One of the guests needs to
What
turn
if we're all in
I've
hell
got
right now?
the page.
For
It's working?
what it's worth, I think it is working.
Oh, man,
Really?
I'm getting a lot of
I-
echo.
Yeah,
It
I
did,
clicked over
lot
to
of
YouTube
echo.
briefly, and I think I could hear you
Okay.
through the maelstrom of echo.
Because
This is what hell is like.
I have it up on my own computer, and I can't hear
One
myself.
of the guests needs to
What
turn
if we're all in hell
I've
right
got
now?
the page.
For
It's working?
what it's worth, I think it is working.
Oh, man,
Really?
I'm getting a lot of
I-
echo.
Yeah,
It
I
did,
clicked over
lot
to
of echo.
YouTube briefly, and I
Okay.
think I could hear you
Okay.
through the maelstrom of echo.
Because
This is what hell is like.
I have it up on my own computer, and I can't hear
One
myself.
of the guests needs to
What if we're all in hell
I've
right now?
got the
For
page. It's
For
working?
what it's worth, I think it is working.
Oh, man,
Really?
I'm getting a
I
lot of
taught her
echo.
even
Yeah, I
distress.
clicked over to
Only
YouTube
once for
briefly, and I
yes,
think I
twice
could
for
hear
no.
you
Okay.
through the maelstrom of
My
echo.
favorite part about this is that it's like
I have it up on my own computer, and I can't hear
One
myself.
of the guests needs to
What if we're all in hell right
I've
now?
got the page.
For
It's working?
what it's worth, I think it is working.
Oh, man,
Really?
I'm getting a
I
lot of
taught her
echo.
even
Yeah, I
distress.
clicked over to
It
YouTube
was-
briefly, and I
Okay.
think
It
I
was
could hear you.
earlier.
Okay, one second, guys. I
Maelstrom
think
of
I might
echo.
be
My
able to
favorite part
fix
about
this.
this is
what
that
hell
it's
is
like
like.
I have it
Yeah.
up on my own computer, and I can't hear
One
myself.
of the guests. Go, Todd.
Yeah, get up and do the slow clap.
Off your shirt.
Okay,
Off your shirt.
they want me to take off my shirt.
You have to.
Again.
Yeah, you've already done it.
Yeah,
Gosh.
if my wife is watching, they just wanted to see the tattoo, honey. That's it, promise.
Dee's like, yeah, the tattoo.
Yeah.
Wait, is this thing on?
We don't know.
Okay, Joe says he thinks it's working now. Maybe.
So the things we said.
So all that stuff, we're just gonna edit that in post.
Well,
Yay, he can hear us!
now.
Woo!
I guess what we need to, is a recording, because, that's probably the more important thing.
Well, yeah, anything we're putting out to YouTube, it's gonna be recorded, so... That little thing you did earlier with your pants, that's...
Oh, that's in there?
Sorry.
That's out in the wild?
Oh, man.
Good.
In the
Good.
wild is a good way to put it.
Right.
Okay, Jonathan Wynn
Hi.
is here. Hi! So, they all heard the porno talk.
Oh,
All right.
Excellent. Yeah, so...
Hi, everybody.
I'm Todd Keisling, and you're watching the very first episode of Beneath the Lake, which, if I don't get fired after this, will probably be the big first in a long-running video cast
The
series.
first and only.
The first and only. The truth is, this is actually my Make-A-Wish. So,
This is a very limited edition.
yeah, joining me tonight, because it's, can I say tonight? It's only 5:30. Joining me this afternoon are some very special guests who have been extremely patient with me so far in the last half hour. I have the editors of the acclaimed anthology, Gutted, Beautiful Horror Stories. I almost said horror stories.
Well,
There's a couple.
And
not,
a
right?
couple of the
Yeah.
authors who are included in its pages. The editors are D. Alexander Ward. Say hello.
Hey,
Doug Murano.
Hello.
Brian Kirk.
Good afternoon.
And the lovely Mercedes M. Yardley.
hi, you guys.
And I'm some weird guy who fell into this job somehow.
You're basically like a technical savant. You're like a master IT.
Yeah. I click buttons. Sometimes I put words on pages.
True.
So
And he has a cool tattoo.
I do have a cool tattoo, which will not be in the recording because that happened before we went live and then offline and then live again. So the topic of discussion tonight is Gutted. Everything about Gutted. I have a outline of discussion questions, but I have a feeling, considering the way we've begun this broadcast, that this is just going to go right out the fucking window. So, but yeah, I'd like for you guys to kind of introduce yourselves, talk a little bit, about who you are, what you do, what you've written, edited, so on. So, just gonna go down the line here. I'm gonna start with Brian Kirk. So, all eyes on you, brother.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Kirk. I am an author primarily of psychological horror, but I do write other strange things. My debut novel was published last July by Samhain Publishing, titled We Are Monsters. It was a finalist for the Bram Stoker Award and has been optioned for film development from the executive producer for films such as Survivor, starring Mark Wahlberg, Role Models with Paul Rudd, and others. Short fiction has been published in several magazines and anthologies, the most recent of which is Gutted, which I'm very pleased with, and are here to talk about now. On to Mercedes.
On to me.
I guess.
Okay.
All right. I guess we're going to you next then. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Didn't mean to step in.
Brian's in charge here.
All right, Mercedes, go ahead.
I'm Mercedes M. Yardley. I've been working with Todd for a while on the Geeky Writers broadcast, so it's a real pleasure to be here for the inaugural Crystal Lake Under the Lake podcast. I'm a writer of whimsical horror. I have an urban fantasy series out through Crystal Lake. The first book is called Nameless, The Darkness Comes, and I just sent more to him yesterday, so there's going to be the other two sequels out fairly soon. I wrote a book called Apocalyptic Montessa, Nuclear Lulu, A Tale of Atomic Love, which is a love story with a lot of pyrotechnics and blood. And my favorite thing I've wrote is Pretty Little Dead Girls, which is a book it's a fairy tale with a high body count, also through Crystal Lake. I just won the Bram Stoker Award for Little Dead Red, which is, surprise, also by Crystal Lake. And I'm really excited about that, and it's sitting right here on my little desk thing. And my story in Gutted is called Water Thy Bones, and just kind of a beautiful, dark story of horror, which is, the theme of Gutted, beautiful horror. So that's me.
Yay.
Yay!
I'm going to go over to David here. David?
yeah, hi. I'm D. Alexander Ward. I co-edited Gutted along with Doug Murano. We've also co-edited a couple of other books, Shadows Over Main Street, and we're in the process of following that up with a volume 2. I'm also an author with a couple books out, most recently one called Beneath Ash and Bone. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. This is going to be cool. Hopefully we got everything running now, so it'll go smoothly.
Yes.
Oh, you just jinxed us. Thanks a lot,
Thanks
Dave.
thanks for reminding me that it went off to a horrible start. Thanks. I tried to put that
Todd,
behind me.
He's gonna go jump now. We'll just have to
I'm just
run
gonna
this without him.
dive out the window. And last but not least is the co-editor of Gutted, Doug Murano. Doug, take it away.
Yeah, hi Todd, and hi everybody. Thanks for having. As you said, I'm the co-editor of Gutted, Beautiful Horror Stories, and as Dee said, I'm the co-editor of Shadows Over Main Street, volumes 1 and 2. I've been kicking around the small presses since about 2008, and my short fiction has appeared in a number of venues, and I've also worked as an editor at a couple of different independent horror publications. If anybody remembers Necrotic Tissue and R. Scott McCoy's outfit from a few years back, I spent a little bit of time there, and I'm really excited to be focusing on editing and being an anthologist lately. So that's my story.
So you're the
Right
one that
on.
never gave me a T-shirt.
Oh, don't
From
blame
Necrotic
me.
Tissue.
We'll call up Scott on that.
Well, I'm very, very happy to have you guys here with us today for the very first episode. And in all sincerity, I apologize for the issues that we had. And I do know you guys are all very busy working on your next project, so taking time out of your day to spend it with, some weird dude on the internet is greatly appreciated. Should I, talk a bit about myself? I don't know.
Please.
Yeah.
Introduce
Yeah.
yourself, weirdo.
Okay,
Of course.
I want to tell you all about me.
Voice.
So I'm Todd Keisling. I'm not some random stranger that Joe just picked out of a crowd. I recently just signed myself with Crystal Lake for a two book excursion coming next year. I also have a couple of novels out through my own company, Precipice Books, Life Transparent and The Liminal Man, books 1 and 2 of a planned trilogy. And I also write short fiction. I've been published alongside with Mercedes several times. It's always great to work with her. And we're recently publishing Anthony J. Rapinoe's collection, Greetings from Moon Hill, which is right here in a nice little slipcase. And
Gorgeous.
that's my little plug. But yeah, that's me, and this is Beneath the Lake, and I guess we should just jump right into it. So, also I do want to say, real quick, those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, those of you who are supporting Crystal Lake's Patreon page, again, thank you very much for your contributions. You feel free to interact with us. I am monitoring the chat right now. If you guys have any questions, we'll certainly try to, get those in to the editors and authors this evening. Also, we are going to be giving away a paperback copy of Gutted, which again is right here. It's this beautiful little thing that I've been reading all afternoon, and it lives up to its title. Trust me on this. It's gonna make you weep and weep and weep.
In a good way.
In a good way. This is the sort of book that you want to give your family for Christmas.
Like 15 and older relatives.
Thank you
Here,
for
Mom.
Yeah,
Right.
give this one to Mom. Hell, give this book to Grandma because you love her that much. So, as a nice little segue to talk about Gutted, what I'm gonna do is I'll pitch a question to the editors. I'll go back and forth between editors and authors. So I'm gonna start with David and Doug, and just tell us a little bit about the Gutted project. Kind of walk us through on a very high level. How did this come to be? How did this happen? What were you thinking?
What were we thinking? Well, David, do you want to jump in, or do you want me to take it?
You take that one, buddy.
Okay. Well, we were fresh first co-editing adventure, which was Shadows Over Main Street, Volume 2. And we wanted to do something to follow it up, just to kind of build on our momentum. And if anybody out there has read or is aware of Shadows Over Main Street, it's Lovecraftian horror meets small town America. So the next book that we wanted to do was something that wasn't quite so attached to a subgenre of horror and broaden out just a little bit. I've always been really attracted to emotional gut punch horror. The first horror novel that I ever read was Stephen King's It. I was big into Robert McCammon. Just that type of, if you think about almost any of the novellas from different seasons, that was the kind of horror that I've always been attracted to. And so I thought, if we can somehow vibe or ride that out through an entire anthology, then that would be something that was really cool. But for the first part of it anyway, we had a really hard time sort of encapsulating what we meant by that. And this quote, and I've actually got it here, when I was an English student in grad school at the University of South Dakota, so go Yotes, I read a quote by an author by the name of Ralph Ellison, The Blues, and I'll read it to you right now. It's, the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain and to transcend it, not by the consolation of philosophy, but by squeezing from it a near-tragic, near-comic lyricism. As a form, the blues is an autobiographical chronicle of personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. And that quote kept on popping into my head, and I thought, well, what does the blues have to do with horror? And then it sort of occurred to me that horror, in the vein that I was discussing earlier, really functions in much the same way that the blues does. A howl can sound a lot like a song. A sigh can turn into a scream, and there's an interesting tension there. And so that helped to focus our efforts. So David and I noodled on this for a long, long time before we really gave it form. We had a hard time naming it, and I was explaining it to my wife, and I said, I really just want people to feel like their insides have been scooped out. She said, well, like they've been gutted. And I said, yeah, exactly like that. She's like, well, why don't you just name it after a feeling? And so I have to give credit to my wife for that little bit of inspiration. So we had ended up just naming it after that feeling of being emotionally.
Nice. Dee, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean that's pretty much the whole story of the inception. I mean, at first when we were noodling around with the idea, it was a little hard for me to grasp. I kept going like, well, yeah, but what are they going to be like? What's going to be the meat of the stories? What's the unifying theme? And then I think it was really when you and Jessica came up with the name, and you said, no, gutted, it's gutted. And I'm like, okay, so I got it. And we talked for a couple example stories, and that really, I think, put it across. I mean, it's the perfect name. I don't think it could be a better description of the stories in that book.
I kept on throwing out these weird descriptions like I want the stories to feel like a ball of snakes having sex, like sort of like awful and mesmerizing and beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And so I was throwing out all this like these abstract weirdo images that I didn't quite know how to put my finger on it, and or like you're standing in a field and a tidal wave comes up to you, or like a great white shark in motion or something like that. This idea of awe and terror at the same time. So
yeah, that is awesome. I love when I heard about the anthology the first time. I think it was from you, Mercedes. You were telling me that you were writing this story for this antho that you got invited to participate in, and you were telling me the concept, and I just loved it from the beginning. It is such a true facet of the genre. Like the best horror stories are the ones, like you said, just feel like you got punched in the gut. I mean, no pun intended. But I love the whole concept of it, and I think the way it came together. I mean, I imagine you guys are super proud of this thing, and you should be, because this is the whole package is amazing. So pat yourselves on the back, please.
Thanks, Todd.
I'll pat
Yeah.
you on the back next time we meet.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna kick it over to the authors now. So, Brian, your story, picking splinters from a sex slave. What? Where did that come from?
Man, I wish I knew. Well, first of all, it came from. It was inspired in some part by the concept behind the anthology. I mean, when someone invites you to submit a story to something called Gutted, you don't start contemplating stories that fill you with the warm and fuzzies. So I thought about, so I wanted to try and consider concepts that I knew would have, that would be emotionally challenging. And when I think about horror, well, first of all, I guess I'll describe the story. So Picking Splinters from a Sex Slave essentially is a story about a young lady who was abducted at a young age, maybe 13, 14, by just some sadistic, perverted monster, human monster, and kept as a sex slave in a box that's a couple inches too short for her. So she's kind of like crunched in it under his bed for 6 years. And when the story begins, she has been rescued and returned home to her father. In the time that she's been gone, the family's completely fallen apart. So he lives alone and is kind of considered her, has basically assumed that she's been dead. And the story is about his kind of fumbling attempts to reacclimate this poor girl back into society and rekindle the relationship that they once had, which, given kind of the personality of this father, would presumably be a strange one to begin with. And when I think about horror, I can't think of many things being more horrific than the reality of that happening to somebody. I think about the reality of that happening to me or someone who I love. And I mean, I don't know that I can come up with anything that scares me personally more than the idea of enduring that. So that's where I went. That kind of situation spoke to me for some reason. It's also somewhat personal to me. My family. So I have a cousin who's the director of a nonprofit called New Friends, New Life in Dallas. That's what they do. They kind of help support women who have been involved in sex trafficking or sexually exploited in some way. So maybe it was kind of in my subconscious to begin with, and then it just came out.
Yeah.
So.
Well. I have to say, like, and for the viewers, I met Brian in person at Nikon a few weeks ago, and we shook hands, and I didn't tell him that I had read the story and Gutted. I wanted, because I knew he was going to be there, I wanted to wait until I met him face to face. We shook hands, said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "Dude, your fucking story." My God. And it was it sets the tone for the collection, I think, beautifully. It follows Stephanie Wojtowicz's poem, and just I had heard going into it, Brian's story is something special, mostly from Mercedes. And just I knew nothing else about it other than that it was special, and I knew the title. And by the time I got to the end of it, I felt horrible in the best way. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, as a parent, it is utterly terrifying to be. You definitely sympathize with this father and what he's going through, and it's. Ugh, I can't even really put that into words. how just awful that would be. And I think the
Man,
way
well, I appreciate that. I mean, first of all, I mean, think about this. While we're talking, while we have the pleasure of having an enjoyable conversation with like-minded people, someone is right now a captive of someone, in like a sex dungeon. You know what I mean? This is. It's not like this is imaginary. You know what I mean? This is happening. This is happening. This is going on right now. And by no means was I trying to exploit the reality of this situation. You know what I mean? So when I knew I wanted to write about it, and not even wanted to write about it, I knew I was going to write about it because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then the only way I can stop thinking about these type of things is to write about it, and they kind of, they go away. But
did he freeze up for anyone else?
I think so.
he did.
Yeah.
Doug, you're no longer the problem child.
Well, that's a relief.
Brian's home. Yeah.
Can someone I am him?
I think I can pick up a little bit where he left
please
off
do.
And just
Please
say
do.
what was interesting to me about it. Not only is it just a completely emotionally devastating story, but that idea of
kind of emotional reaction that
he's
comes
back.
along with that story.
Whoa, he's
Did
back?
I cut off?
Yeah, you were gone. We thought I was getting ready to send you a message. Wow. Well, that's kind of awkward.
yeah, he's gone again.
Oh,
But
no.
I guess just to kind of keep things rolling, what appealed to me was that it didn't dwell on the acts themselves. It dealt
Right.
with the aftermath, and the horror of the story is just that this father, first off, obviously what happens to the young lady is horrific in itself, but just the bad luck that she would also have a father who is so woefully ill-equipped to reach out to her. He tries, but he just doesn't have the tools, the financial tools, the emotional tools, the psychological tools to properly reach his daughter. And it's a tragedy for her, of course. It's a tragedy for him, and it just I know I don't want to get into too much spoiler territory, but it doesn't have a happy resolution by any means.
Well, most sex trafficking stories don't. Situations don't have a happy ending. And I love Brian's story. I think it should win every award out there next year. I mean, it's just fantastic. But what really got me about it was not only how it just sliced my heart apart, but it was done with such love. I mean, this poor father loved his daughter, and the things that he did were done out of, like you said, ill-equipped, but love, and I really, really liked that. I mean, it was a fantastic and I think a very bold choice to open Gutted, because I mean, you can't read that story and not feel something, whether it's like, oh my gosh, or like, oh, this was amazing, or it's very polarizing tale, and I think most of Brian's work tends to be polarizing, but it was fantastic. So kudos to you guys for opening with that, because I read that and I'm like, oh great. Now when I come back from the dead, I know what the rest of the book is going to be. It's going to be, it's stellar. I mean, that was brave.
Yeah.
You guys are brave men.
Yes.
Well, we knew we wanted to make a statement immediately, and there are so many great stories in the book that it wasn't an easy choice, but the scariest choice was Brian's, and we thought the scary thing is often, as we put this book together, the scary thing to do is the best thing to do, and so we just sort of carried that philosophy forward and said we're going to come out with a controversial story, but it's going to be an emotional haymaker.
Rock on.
Yeah. When we read his submission, I remember personally feeling as like Mercedes said, even though the way it ends up, the extent to which his father goes to communicate his love to this child, as disturbing as it is, it really does come from a place of love. And but I put it down and I was like, I asked Doug, I said, okay, obviously it's incredible, but does the world really need this story out there? And we did stop and think about that. It was like, and so then when, Doug said, well, look, it'd be cowardly not to put this out there. And I said, what, you're right. And so we sent Brian the most interesting acceptance letter I think we've ever sent anyone.
Wow.
Said, Brian, what the fuck is wrong with you? Accepted. Welcome to Gutted.
And then we added, get ready for the hate mail.
Right.
Yeah.
But not to mean that we took that decision lightly at all, but we just, after reading that story, you sort of have to try to get yourself emotionally elevated again, I guess.
Yeah, there are some comments in the chat right now, Brian. They're saying they think you sold the book on your own. Powerful stuff. And also that it's Sergio Pereira says your Brian story is my favorite from Gutted, and that's saying something since my favorite author Neil Gaiman is in the anthology too. So
Oh wow!
pat yourself on the back, my friend. Like right now, wild. While we're all watching you.
Am I?
Take off your shirt. No.
just take it off.
Did I cut out, or am I still on the thing?
You're with us now.
You
did cut off in the middle of talking about the story.
Good.
Doug kind of picked up where you left off and took it from there.
Oh, right on.
So
that is all nice to hear. So thank you, everybody.
No problem. So I'm gonna go to Mercedes now. What inspired your story, Mercedes? What are thy bones?
A couple things did. There was a picture, excuse me, a picture that I was looking at online, and it's a skeleton, and it's like cracked in half, and it has flowers growing up through its ribs and skull and things like that. And that tends to be something I'm very attracted to. If I could choose all the art in my home and maybe not have it have to be something a child could look at and not die, I really love like femurs with vines wrapped around them and things like that. And so I took this picture, and mine is ultimately a story about a woman who everybody sees the surface, and there's so much more under the surface. And she meets a man who is willing to love her from the inside out, quite literally. And as Donald put it, he says, it's nice to read a story where like a woman carves up, or a guy carves up his girlfriend, and it manages to be beautiful. And I'm like, oh well, when you put it that way, thanks, But it's a story about pain and loss and self-expression and all these different things. And so I really enjoyed writing that one. It was fun. It's not as emotionally getting as Brian's, but
well, no, I mean I really enjoyed it as well.
No.
And
I like it. It was very true to myself, I think, very true to my thoughts. And I like to address situations that are real situations. I write quite a bit about suicide and mental illness, and this is about a woman who chooses to cut in order to alleviate her pain. So she actually takes a razor blade to her skin and takes a knife to her skin, and so it was a beautiful way, I think, to deal with a situation that's very, very realistic and very dark, and a lot of people have experience with it, but it's still very stigmatized to talk about it. And so I wrote about something that a lot of people face, and that's been interesting because most of the mail that I've been receiving about that every now, when I hear something about that, is I'm glad you tackled this as something real, even though I wrote it in a very magical surrealism sort of way. So that's cool to have people be like, yeah, you just kind of told my story in a way, and I try to do that with respect instead of being like, woo, because it's easy to make mental illness in any form very trite, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job handling it with the story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
And what really carries the story well is exactly what Mercedes mentioned was the magical realist approach. Right. It could have been a really group, and that's not what we were after at all. But by giving it this surrealist spin, it becomes strangely, and I hope I'm not off here, but a strange sort of empowering story.
Yeah.
It becomes something that's more than a story about mutilation. It doesn't read that way at all. It's a story about discovery.
Right. Yeah, it's actually in one respect. Doug and I were talking about this in relation to another conversation, and it is in subject matter. It almost fits the bill of extreme horror, except that you don't get that out of it at all when you read it. It's perfect for the book. It's beautiful. It's it really tugs at your heartstrings, and man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to send these guys. They want beautiful horror. Here's about a girl that cuts herself. Lots. Okay. You never know how something's going to be taken.
It is strange though, because you read it and you sort of have to stop yourself and remind yourself this is what central to the story is cutting of a young woman, and again it reads as so much more than that. That I think in lesser hands it would not have worked.
Nope.
It so well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm just going up through the chat here, and it looks like there were some questions a few minutes ago. Sergio Pereira asks, question for the Gutted authors. When you wrote your stories, did you plan to write short stories or something more? He says he's always been interested in hearing about the thought process. So I myself am also curious about this. How do you keep your stories under control? Not let them just keep going and going and going.
You want to take it first, Brian?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I mean, basically, mine's pretty pedestrian in that I just follow the guidelines.
What?
I mean, there's,
And you better.
All right.
I mean, there was a word limit, and I just had to stay within it. So it's like you just make sure you do. I'm not trying to trivialize the question. It's just, I mean, I knew kind of what, it had to be a short story. So you just, I don't know how. I guess there are different approaches to short work versus long work. And the way I know that is because I started out writing short in thinking that I was practicing for writing long. And then I went to write my first novel and I realized it's a completely different beast. And it's not like that I'd wasted all my time, but that had not prepared me to write a novel. I think that short fiction for me is it's more conceptual. It's about kind of a singular idea, and you have to be more focused. And I also think language is much more important, at least when with my approach to short fiction, in that the language is almost a character within the story. But in terms of did I know that I was writing a short story when I started out? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What do you think, Mercedes?
Yeah, I received an invitation to submit to Gutted, so I knew that I needed to hit, the guidelines. I knew if I wanted my work to be considered, and this is a novel concept for writers sometimes, but guidelines are there for a reason, and I wanted to have my work be taken seriously. So I knew how long it needed to be, but that still doesn't mean that you can't explore that longer in another piece of work. So what I've done quite a few times is I'll start a short story and I'll write about it and I'll, write the story, and then I'll feel that, that isn't completely adequately explored. I'd like to explore that out. In fact, I have a novel that's with a couple of agents right now called Stormlight, and I have a short story in my my short story collection that came out in like 2012 that's called The Quiet Places Where Your Body Grows. And so it was a flash fiction, less than 100 or 1,000 words, and it has this piece. And it's like, that's not the whole story. There's so much more there. So I can explore that in a different work. But in this case, man, I was so elated to get this invitation, and I wasn't going to screw it up if I could help it. So I kept it to what they asked for.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
Well, I got to say, Mercedes, in all of the reviews I've seen, in particularly the Amazon, well, both, like, critical reviews and reader reviews, I would say that yours has been singled out probably the most consistently out of all the stories, that I've seen. When I think you're undervaluing your story a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it knocked people's socks off for sure.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. It's hard to see your own work objectively, because the story that I'm like, I'm in love with this story. I have the story called Flat World in one of my book anthology, whatever. And I'm like, this is a great story. I love it so much. And Big Man Ben, that's one of my favorite stories I ever wrote, and nobody said a word about it. So you can't, I can't tell what people, I'm just like, oh, my work sucks, and I'll just have to accept it, So thank you. It's tough to evaluate your own work as a creator.
I agree. That old trope about the artist being their worst critic is absolutely true.
Yeah, because you see everything wrong with everything you've ever written in your whole entire life, and that's kind of no wonder we're all depressed.
Are we?
Well,
no wonder there's a trope.
I'm pretty depressed right now over the way the stream went. Kicked off. So.
We don't have
come on now.
No, buddy.
Can I dealt
with it beautifully.
Can I have a hug? Can I have a hug? I'm just fishing for hugs right now.
Everyone, write Todd a love letter. You did good, Todd. You did good.
I've been getting some repeated questions about what's in the suitcase right here, and I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, what is in the suitcase? It's kind of an existential question, isn't it?
Don't you dare answer that, Todd.
Yeah.
Never.
We paid you good money.
There will not be an answer to that question. What isn't in the suitcase, kids? So, I am going to interject real quick, because hugs for Todd. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my new nonprofit.
That's your nonprofit, Hugs for Todd.
We need a Sarah McLachlan song right now.
Oh, where's Eric Pruitt when we need him?
Pictures of Todd looking broken and sad.
Wow. So, before I forget, right before we started this wonderful journey that we're all on right now. Our wonderful editor and founder of Crystal Lake, Joe Maynard, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Joe, I apologize if I screwed that up, like so many other things tonight. Tales from the Lake Volume 3 pre-orders for the ebook have just gone live. Joe, you are a moderator in the chat, so you can post a link to that. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes when the stream itself, the recording of the stream, is available for everyone else later this weekend. But yes, Tales from the Lake Volume 3 pre-order is live on ebook on Amazon. Just hit that shit.
Hit it.
So, now on with the show. This concludes our commercial break from our sponsor, Crystal Lake Publishing.
Soap, it keeps you clean. Do.
So we are. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot I had the artwork queued up to show everybody. Just look at this beautiful artwork here that was designed by Caitlin Hackett. You guys can't see it, but everybody else can. Who's watching on the stream? Just look at this artwork here. I feel like that perfectly sums up what the Antho is about. And here's a version without the titles and everything. Just want to take a moment and appreciate that. Now I'm going to ask a question that just made me think of it. How did you guys did you know the artist who designed that, or?
Yeah, actually, a while back I had done I can't remember who. I think somebody turned me on to her. I think it was George Catronis, and I did an interview with her because I found her Caitlin Hackett's style of art particularly interesting and almost in a horrifying way, because she does depict sort of eviscerated animals, and usually she works with animals almost exclusively. So when Doug was describing his idea for the cover, and we were kind of bouncing it back and forth, and I thought, man, she would be perfect for what he's describing, where you have these remains sort of entwined with roses and flowers, and so yeah, that was kind of how that came about. And I showed him, and he checked it out, and we approached her about it.
Nice.
I had this really terrible, I called it a concept drawing, but it was basically like stick figures intertwined. It was terrible. And from that, I mean, nobody should ever see that.
I would like to see that.
Caitlin really took it a long way.
She's like, let's give this one a body, okay? Let's give it a body.
Wow.
It's like Rocco's concept drawing or something.
Yeah, it's really embarrassing, but she just nailed it. I mean, it was the second that David directed me to her site, it almost reminded me of, and the artist and the author escapes me right now, but I had this retelling of St. George and the Dragon growing up, and it was almost like medieval illumination style, the illuminated text.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the style that she brings to a lot of her work, and it has this eerie timelessness to it that really appealed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a perfect cover for such a harrowing collection. Again, the book is gutted, folks, and it is for sale. So, I'm gonna put that right there.
That one copy that will be given away.
That we are giving away a copy tonight. I got to figure out how we're gonna do that. Are we just gonna go with like best question, or pick a random number? I don't know.
I don't know. Hats
I
are
don't
always
know.
good.
How long's a piece of string? We'll figure it out. So we're just gonna wing it. So there was another question up here that I actually also had written down myself. I think it was Jonathan Wynn who asked it, who is also a Crystal Lake author, who is the author of Eidolon Avenue. That's a free plug for you, buddy. I'm just looking for his question. It was about the selection process, or not the selection process, but just how did you go about like approaching the authors? Like, did you have a list, or did how did this come to be in terms of like selecting who to invite, that sort of thing? Was there an open call?
Yeah, how did you find us?
there was no open call. David and I just kind of came up with kind of a wish list. I mean, there were authors that we knew. Obviously Clive and Neil were two authors that came to mind immediately when we thought about beauty and horror. And you don't right off the bat think that they're going to go for it, but it's just kind of a matter of having kind of a larger pool of authors, and then seeing what works out. We've both been, David and I have both been active in the small press landscape and horror for many years, and so through that process you kind of come to understand who has what style, and you just try to figure out who might be able to explore different aspects of who might be able to do that in interesting ways.
Yeah.
And so it was invite only. We didn't have an open call.
Okay. Save yourself from having to dig through all the slush pile a little bit.
Well, and I feel like maybe we should address that too. It's not that we're against new authors or trying to find new talent. Honestly, it's logistics. It's just a matter of time. I've got 3 more small children now. The concept, the prospect of trying to read 400 submissions in a few months, it's just not happening. And we had a pretty focused idea for what we wanted, and just went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was an intern for a literary magazine at my university many years ago, and as an intern I got stuck on slush duty, as we called it, and yeah, I totally understand.
But to be fair, I read the slush pile at Necrotic Tissue. We didn't call it slush. We just and that was for a specific reason. Is just everybody's at a different place.
Right.
Everybody's at a different place in their learning and in their writing, and there's a value in seeking that new talent. That's just not what this book was about.
Yeah.
I do have another question, actually, on the topic of submissions and everything. Was there were there any stories that were just too extreme? Like, did you get some in that were like way too over the top? I mean, like, oh my God, we can't publish this, or that were good but you had to turn them down because of that fact? Or did you ask any of the authors to tone their stories down?
We definitely, I think Doug would agree, we got a few that were really good stories, but and it wasn't that they were too extreme or too over the top. It was more that they didn't fit the theme the way that we wanted the book to shape up, and it wasn't that they were bad stories at all. And that's the hardest part of putting together these anthologies, is saying no to someone who's giving you a great story that it just doesn't fit the theme the way that you want the theme to come together. I think, wouldn't you say that's fair, Doug?
Oh, absolutely. And David and I have both talked about this at length. It's kind of a crazy thing to try to do, to organize a book around a feeling or the idea of what's beautiful, because everybody's got a different idea of what that is. And so than most, this process was really a subjective one. It just kind of had more to do with the ebb and flow of the stories, and really our, no pun intended, but our gut feeling about a story, rather than that was really the deciding factor. But to answer your question more directly, we really didn't have any that we tossed out because it was too extreme. I would say if we were going to do that with any of them, it would have been Brian's. And we accepted that one pretty early in the process. And I mean, where do you go? From there, we didn't have any arbitrary sort of like X, Y, and Z cannot be a part of this book. It's just a matter of how they're handled. And I think in all cases in the book, the authors, whatever the subject matter, and it oftentimes is difficult subject matter, but they handled it with a lot of grace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. Just from reading through, who did we lose? Did we just lose someone?
Brian
for a minute. Yeah, I'm back on now.
And then lost his old profile. He had two. We're good.
We're gonna have to change topics
we got
then.
this.
I can't talk about Brian anymore.
Damn it! I'll mute.
No, I was saying that I was reading through some of the stories this afternoon, just killing time waiting for the broadcast, and another story I talked to you guys about beforehand was Damien Angelico Walter's story, which the name escapes me at the moment, but I have my trusty book right here.
On the other side of the door, everything changes.
Yes,
is
that's
what
it.
Thinking of.
That one also. Oh my God! I think that one kind of not necessarily in the same. Kind of captures the same feeling a little bit, in terms of as Brian's story, from the perspective of a parent trying to identify with their child, and that one got me. That one I kind of saw. That was a motorcycle. I kind of saw where it was headed, and it's just one of those things where you don't want to look, but you have to,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that story is so topical too. With kids and electronics and social media and stuff that we never had to deal with growing up. And I think the way the way it comes together inside that story is just as a parent, it's a tough one to read.
I agree. So, question for the authors, Brian and Mercedes.
Thanks, I forgot if I was an author or not.
Well, surprise!
I thought I edited. I did this. This book is mine.
Considering the subject matter of your stories and the heaviness of it, was there any point during the process where you kind of had to stop and think, this is really sick? Like, maybe I shouldn't do this?
You kind of broke up on me. Was that for me or for Mercedes?
It was for both of you, but since I clicked on your name, you can answer it.
All right. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I definitely questioned whether or not I was taking things too far. I was a little sick to my stomach when I hit send and actually emailed it to the editors, which I thought was kind of a good sign, I guess. But yeah, I mean, everything. So I consider myself kind of a nice guy. I'm a happy guy. I'm an optimist. I'm not some like sadist. You know what I mean? I don't, I don't, murder puppies. You know what I mean? It's like, but I'm drawn to this material. I'm drawn, this is, for whatever reason, the way my imagination works. And it puzzles me as much as anyone else. It's like my whole life I've wondered if I should actually do this or not, or just let it stay in my imagination. You know what I mean? It's not something that necessarily thrills my parents. It's not something that, that in polite conversation I can be like, dude, you really need to read my new story and gut it. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about earlier, Doug, you were saying you were an editor for necrotic tissue. I remember when my grandmother was like, oh, I heard you got a story out. Like, where is it? I was like, necrotic tissue. You know what I mean? Like,
But I always thought you were such a nice young man.
So yeah, so the whole like my whole life is all about, or at least the artistic side of my life has been this kind of balancing act of why am I doing this? You know what I mean? But I for whatever, I was born this way. You know what I mean? So in terms of this story in particular, though, so with the father being kind of a comedian, that allowed me to approach it somewhat with albeit a very dark, at least somewhat of a sense of humor. And part of my theme with the story is laughter is the best medicine. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of, in some way, how he deals with the situation. And there's this line at the very end of the story. It's not a spoiler, it's just a line that says something. It kind of poses the question of, I wonder if our creator laughs or cries at our human predicaments. And that's kind of how I felt when writing the story. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You know what I mean? At the fact that I was writing this weird thing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Mercedes, what about you?
I've tried to, when I feel that maybe I'm taking something a little too far, or when I feel that I'm touching a subject matter that's maybe a little more taboo, I've learned that that's when I need to push through and really write about it. Like with Little Dead Red, which is a story about sexual abuse and murder and things of that sort. And I was writing it and I was like, because, it's sad and it's real life situations that are tough to look at, and you want to treat it with respect, but you also want to. And that was great for me because that was maybe the first time that I'd written something that I felt that I wanted to stop because it was kind of getting too itchy for me, and I pushed through and it ended up being a very powerful story. So to me, it was difficult to talk about a girl that goes home at night and slices her skin, It takes all the pain that she gets during the day and holds that close and then lets it out in a way. And part of the reason that she does it particularly is because people are always commenting on her appearance, and she's particularly beautiful, or they say that she's beautiful, and so she's trying to ugly up. She wants people to see her not for, and here's my body. She wants people to see her for her. And so it was hurtful in a way to write about, because I know a lot of people that this is a way that they feel that they have to deal with their pain. And I wanted to be respectful to that, but also I wanted to write about that. So she goes home and, uglies up what everyone sees so that people will see the real her, and no one sees the real her. They don't even notice, except this guy that is like, oh, your bones are poking out of your knees pretty awesomely, and, he's really into bones. And so I didn't feel like I needed to stop, but I did feel like I needed to not trivialize something so important.
Cool.
Yeah, I was like, the darker the better.
It's that's what horror is for. It's a transgressive genre by its very nature, and sometimes I think I don't want to say we forget about that, but there are a lot of there's a movement in some circles where you can't talk about certain things, but I don't think anything is off limits, and it shouldn't be. Just a matter of how is this executed. Subject matter, you can write about anything, but you could do it in a way that's edifying and beautiful and raises questions. That's the best kind of fiction. It raises questions.
I agree. I feel like the moment you look away from whatever it is that you're trying to face in your fiction, you're doing a disservice to the reader and the story.
I'll agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that attracts me to horror itself as a genre, is we can discuss these things. They're stigmatized. You can't talk about this. You can't talk about this. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, people lose their children. People die in horrendous ways. We don't know how to deal with loss. There are monsters that are the guy next door. And to be able to write about that and have people read that and sit and have a discussion about that is paramount. And there are other genres where you can do that, but horror just seems to be like, let's lay all the ugly flat on the table and let's talk about it. And I love it. It's a very brave genre. I find it very, again, to use the word empowering. We can write about something that, if I'm writing kind of a cutesier book, I can't be like, and then her baby was dead. Oh, it's like, well, I could, and I probably have.
How did that go again? I want to hear the death metal growl from Mercedes Yardley.
That's my new band. Right, anyway. But I love that we can do that in horror, and it's very cool. And I hate to play the gender card, but I'm gonna, especially as a woman, to discuss this. And I'm a person of faith, so technically I'm not supposed to discuss this on that aspect either. And with horror, it's like, let's lay it all out. Let's talk about all of it. All the things we're not supposed to. I love that. Ooh, I love it. I love it good.
And even if and I'm not saying any of our authors did, but I think even if one or more of them would have, or even if David and I would have failed in this endeavor, and some people may think that, but at least we failed trying to go for it, trying to ask the hard questions, trying to do what horror is supposed to do. Yeah. So I can live with that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like this is what horror is all about. It's supposed to, make you feel uncomfortable and everything. Yes, Mercedes.
Make you feel, period. Make you feel, period. Yeah. Sorry, I'm like super passionate about it. Okay, I'm
fine. It's totally fine. I want to hear more of the death metal growl.
Mercedes.
Yes.
Is there a topic that's off the table for you? Like, is there a subject that you wouldn't touch?
There used to be, but no, I think not. Like, I used to think I'm never going to write about graphic sex, because, and or graphic humiliation of someone in like a sexual humiliation, because to me that's really, like a graphic rape. I don't think I would do that graphically, but I will write about rape and the feelings and the aftermath, but I tend to not have the microscope on that part. But that was always my, I don't want to go there. Yeah, that's probably it. Pedophilia, graphically, no.
Yeah, well, that's more like a treatment. That's more how you approach it versus the subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you, right.
Yeah, I always thought I wouldn't ever write about rape because I was very young and naive and didn't realize how much, it really does need to be discussed. So, yeah, I think I'll write about all of it, Brian.
I think you do.
Speaking
Is that the way
of,
your imagination has always worked, or did that emerge later in life?
What do you mean?
Like just being, the scary stories that, your mind going to dark places.
I've always had a tendency to go dark very quickly. So, yeah, my imagination, right? My other friends are playing with My Little Ponies. Hi, Janice. And I was like writing stories about, the very first story I ever read in class. I remember my third grade teacher let me read a story in class. There was like a submarine and like a sea monster, and everybody was dying and everything flooded with water, and I had this like blood curdling shriek. I'm like, ah! As I read it, it was great.
Nice.
And yeah, it's always been there. I've just learned I've spent a long time trying to deny it, and I spent a long time trying to, I'm a good Christian religious girl. I should thinking about flowers and puppies and kittens. And finally, when I got out of my own way, I can be who I am and still, not be sent to prison or hell, whatever. So.
Yeah, and fiction.
It's always been here.
Fiction, I think, and especially horror, it gives you a safe place to kind of delve into these darker things, and a lot of times it helps you. I believe that it can give you the tools to deal with things that are in real life. Usually, Todd, you brought up Damien Angelica Walter's story. I really almost think that should be required reading for every teenage girl and her mom, and the dad, for that matter.
Yeah. I'd agree with you on that.
That's a real thing that's out there.
I would agree with you on that 110%, my friend.
Yeah, no, I agree. But see, the act of doing it is very cathartic, I think, to those who do it, and hopefully it is to the people who enjoy it. It's just strange to me, or curious to me, I guess, that the universe or nature has decided that has just wired people this way. You know what I mean? Wired people, and it's even more curious to me that the people that tend to be wired to fixate on the darker elements of life are generally very happy, kind of loving and caring people. So it's this strange polarity that seems to be at play with the people who are drawn to this material. It's weird.
That try to do something with it. Jeffrey Dahmer was obviously wired different and chose not to write about it, versus going out and exploring. So I think there's people that are wired toward the darkness, which are just born under a black cloud, but can see perhaps the beauty of it or have a good support system that kind of, my 8-year-old, she's dark. She's a dark little thing. And yeah, she is. And that's okay. That's okay. But what my discussion with her is, you can, look at, talk about vampires, all these things, as long as you do not make other people feel badly. Mm-hmm. You need to have that countenance where they can come and ask you for help if they ever need to ask you for help. That's the family rule. Do what you want, but be sure that you are open enough and that someone can come and ask you for help if they need it. So keep, that lets her decide where it falls in line. But that's what I always tried to live by myself too. Like, I can, whatever, as long as people, if they need me, they can feel comfortable to ask me.
Well, and that's kind of one of the more important personal things to me about this book, was that this book is a challenge to those who look into the darkness, find the beauty, It's not always there. It's not always apparent. Find it, though. It's there if you look for it.
Right.
Yeah,
And even
it's
though
quite.
this is a very, very dark collection of stories, if you look for it, there's beauty in every one of these, whether it's the language, the philosophy, the treatment, the rhythm of it. There's beauty somewhere, and that to me is an extremely hopeful and necessary thing to do, because this stuff, like David said, a lot of it is based in real life. It's all around us. So what do you do about that? What do you do about that? Do you revel in it, or do you look for the beauty? Do you challenge yourself to find it? Because you will.
It's ultimately an inspiring book. It was strange to put that book down and be like, I am, depressed and uplifted at the same time. The darkness, but there was something about, like you said, something of value in each story. So I mean, that was like, here, Grandma, you'll feel, read your Bible stories and then read this and see how people respond and try to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Doug, that you have the parallel with the blues, because I'm a huge blues fan, and I see that, and maybe that's why I'm drawn to it, because it's men and women singing about heartbreak. Really, that's what the blues is. I mean, primarily it's about losing love, or but you never see a blues artist singing with a frown. You know what I mean? They're always smiling, and whenever I hear the blues, I get uplifted. You know what I mean? To the point of like almost of joy, and I don't, it's almost, and it is empowering, because it's almost like we're still standing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like we're still here. This is all going on. We're facing it. You know what I mean? We're seeing it clearly, and it hasn't broken us yet. It's, I don't know. There is something very powerful there.
By naming your pain, you from it. It's an act of defiance. And I think that's what this book is designed to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And just the idea of, by identifying the pain, you're standing up to it, you're owning it, and in some ways controlling it.
It's that idea of, from that quote, you finger that jagged grain, you run your finger along it, and you feel the bumps, and it's going to cut you. But because beauty is the potential result.
I think beauty is more challenging than horror, to be honest. Like, when I'm faced with something truly beautiful, that has a tendency to break me more than something really ugly. Yeah. In some strange way. It's like the most difficult emotion I've ever experienced is nostalgia. If you ever reflect back on really poignant or beautiful memories that are lost to you, and I don't know if you've ever felt that really strong, intense sensation of nostalgia. I've had panic attacks stemming from that emotion, and it's nothing but reflecting back on beautiful childhood memories. And it's I don't know. So yeah, beauty breaks my heart more than horror does for some reason.
Well, they're so intertwined. I mean, because you have these beautiful moments, but they're never going to come back. You'll never capture them. They are lost to you forever. I mean, there's a horror to that. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite things is, there's strength in suffering. There's all these, lean into the pain. There's empowerment in it, but there's also so much loss, and there's almost a desperation to grab as much beauty as you can with both hands, because you need that to get through this life, which can be very dark, but at the same time, the darkness makes you appreciate everything that's beautiful. If you just had, your mediocre little life, the people that have gone through the most pain are the ones that appreciate the small things. And I love that. I love that appreciation, or anything that stems you into seeing something for more than what it really is, or for more than what you see, to see what's really there versus, yeah, this is just a dark path. Well, this is a dark path, but you learned something, or you gained a friend from that, or you gained understanding from that. I think it's just awesome. Humans are we're pretty amazing when we're not being stupid dorks.
Yeah.
Well, no doubt. Yeah. That's actually interesting, because it seems like all these stories, maybe except for on the other side, everything changes, which is really painful. I don't know. Is there hope at the end of that story? Because I was going to say, most of these stories that there's some spark of hope. You know what I mean? No matter how.
I personally, I don't think so.
No.
That was the impression I got from it. I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't read it yet. I personally did not find any hope at the end of it.
The hope is our hope.
Right.
The hope is having read this.
Yeah,
we can be better.
That's perfect.
Right.
And that's where I'm coming at it.
Yeah. The utility in that story is in it's ultimately a warning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If there was no hope, there wouldn't be the part on the end of the title, everything changes. There's the potential for everything changing. And even though it doesn't happen within that narrative, we have that hope. We can cross that door.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That's a great answer, Doug.
Yeah, right on. It's have any of you guys read? I can't think of the author's name right now. He's a psychologist, but the book, it's a work of nonfiction called "Man's Search for Meaning."
No.
Anyone? No. Well, what's interesting about the book? So it's written by a psychologist who is a Holocaust survivor. And his the point of the book is the importance of having a purpose in life and having kind of how to impart meaning into your life, and what that does for people when they're able to find it. But he takes it all the way back to the most hopeless of situations, being someone at the Holocaust, being in one of these concentration camps. And his kind of thesis on that was, what do you do when there is no hope? And he came up, how do you find meaning in a situation like that? And his was suffer with grace, which I found was pretty profound. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But always, no matter how dark or how hopeless your situation seems, there's always a way to find meaning in it. And so anyway, I think that there's something. I think that is somewhat of a theme within this book as well.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I agree. That was very well said. Thank you. On that, now that we've gone into the depths of darkness and despair, so
Do we lose all our viewers? They all
no, we lost a couple of viewers actually. I'm not kidding you. Well, one of them had to sign off. I saw them say so in the chat. We got about 7 people watching, but bear in mind that this is to a closed group of people right now. It'll be going public after we're done. Hey, Frank Arrington showed up. Hey, Frank, how's it going, buddy? Thank you for joining us.
What's up, Frank?
Met Frank at Nikon last month. Really nice guy. So a couple of things, since we are getting to a point where we're gonna have to wrap this up. Someone had asked in the chat what was up with everyone wanting to take their shirts off, and I'm bringing this up because
Mercedes.
I'm bringing this up because this is a perfect opportunity to segue into one of the things that Joe asked me to say to Mercedes on his behalf.
That has to do with taking shirts off?
It does totally got to do with taking your shirt off, baby. No,
I gotta go, guys.
No wonder you wouldn't tell me earlier.
no, actually, he wanted me to let you know that he's going to be in touch with you tomorrow regarding your very own Crystal Lake t-shirt.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, right on.
And those of you who
Fantastic.
are watching right now, I'm wearing a custom-made Crystal Lake Publishing t-shirt that has my own Luke Spooner drawn caricature of my alter ego, Mr. Hush.
Woo!
Look at that.
So,
How fantastic. Oh,
So-
that's wonderful.
so Mercedes,
Thanks, Joe.
that's for you, and also Brian. The announcement I have for you, sir, is that Joe wanted me to tell you that he only edits books on special occasions, for special books, and he wants to invite you to an anthology. So,
Oh, right on.
Awesome.
I tried to
That's
talk
very
him
cool.
out of
Right
it
on.
because you're kind of weird, but you know.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, he's gonna rescind that invite.
Like, you're gonna regret that. God, you're gonna regret. No, I'm kidding. Oh, I love you, Brian. I love your work. So it's gonna be a great fit, I think. I don't know what the anthology is.
That's fantastic.
But, you know, he'll be in touch with details, I'm sure. So that's
awesome.
Those are the two
So-
announcements I have for you guys.
Todd,
Yes.
Joe contacted me earlier today, and he wanted to let you know that he'll be in touch with you about that book as
Wait, what?
You cut out
Wow.
what?
I
What?
said.
You
I said Joe was in touch with me earlier today, and he said to make sure to let you know that he would be in touch with you about that book as well, Todd.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh,
Yay! I feel like you're gonna pull the rug out from underneath me
No,
right
this
now
is
and just
true.
tell me this is
This
bullshit.
is true. And I'm also told that Mercedes, when you finish your trilogy, you can submit too. Not sure what that means, but
I like that when
It
you're
means that I'm
finished with
supposed
your
to have
trilogy.
my second. I'm working on it. I really am, though. I really am working on it.
but seriously, you're always welcome. He says, "Don't." All kidding aside.
No.
So we don't have the details on the book yet. We don't.
No details yet.
There's no details on the book. No.
Do you have a timeline for the book so that I can have the trilogy done in time to submit? Because I will do that.
I don't know really anything about it other than that.
I love
Awesome.
Joe. He is probably the best publisher. Yeah, definitely the
Yeah.
best publisher I've ever worked for. Takes time to communicate with his authors, does what he can to take the stress off you. Just stellar. So, yeah, I'll get the trilogy done for him simply because I love him and want to support him. So
Yes.
let's do that
Yeah,
thing.
and I'd like to echo that. I don't think we've spent nearly enough time talking about Joe and Crystal Lake Publishing, at least in terms of Joe's influence on Gutted. He gave us all the room in the world to run with when we wanted to make this book. He said go for it every single time. He's been the most supportive partner we could have ever hoped for. So kudos to Joe and Crystal Lake.
That was perfect. The
Right.
perfect timing there, because as soon as you said that, there was just a crack of lightning and thunder over here. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, the sky has opened up because we're talking about Joe at Crystal Lake. It's just, you couldn't
So
ask for better
speaketh
timing
God.
on that. All we needed after that was Mercedes' death metal growl.
Yeah.
So, Joe is a extremely gracious person, and he's a great guy, great friend, and I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, not because I think he's gonna fire me after this broadcast, but so yeah. I think on that note, especially because we are getting some inclement weather right now, I'm gonna have to wrap this up because my power may go out.
I just have to say really quick, my husband just came in to see if I was okay because he heard the death metal scream. I'm like, no, it's okay.
That's fantastic.
We're
Like,
just
what have
that
you guys
excited about
done?
horror fiction.
Like, they were mean to me.
So, I just want to say thanks again for everyone tuning in with us. I apologize again for the technical difficulties at the beginning. I hope you liked it, and hopefully this won't be the only one we do. Hopefully we can do this again in a few weeks. So to wrap this up, I'm going to go down the line, starting with Brian. Brian, anything you want to say about any projects you're working on, or currently any plugs you want to do currently? Knock yourself out, dude.
I don't have anything really coming out right now. Everything I have a novel out on submission that I'm waiting to hear back on, and I'm currently about 3/4 of the way through another novel that I'm working on by request of a publisher that I can't currently name. But if anyone wants to connect through social media, my website is briankirkblog.com, and all my social media stuff is there. So I'd love to connect, and I really appreciate the invite to be on this. This is fantastic, and Joe, thank you for inviting me to submit a story. I certainly will take you up on that, and I've enjoyed chatting with all you guys.
Right on. Enjoyed having you. D, you got anything in the works right now?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'll say go buy Gutted. Also, if you're into Lovecraftian stuff, we did recently just re-release Shadows Over Main Street with a new publisher. My own work, Beneath Ash and Bone, is available at Amazon in Kindle and paperback. I should mention these. We are going to be setting up a store for these the interior artwork.
Beautiful.
Oh, very cool.
That's my story.
Yes.
That's my story right there.
Yeah.
That's my.
So we have these tarot cards that we're going to be selling at a online store very soon for the interior artwork inside of Gutted. So if you're into that kind of thing and just kind of a neat thing to have around, decorate your walls with them, whatever. Those will be available soon. So, and I think the T-shirts as well. So,
Nice.
Rock on.
Yeah, I got one of those tarot cards at Nikon as well for John Taft's story, and these are really awesome. So, Doug, you're up next, buddy.
There's nothing that I can really talk about in any detail. I've got another that's in the works right now. It's a little something different. Brian and Mercedes know a little bit more about it, but that's about all I can say. I can't really let the cat out of the bag, but look for something new from Crystal Lake Publishing sometime in the middle of next year. It's going to be really exciting. And I'm thrilled to be able to have the chance to work with Joe again.
Nice.
Rock on.
Okay, Mr. Can't really talk about it.
Big looking.
I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding. Mercedes?
Yeah, so Water Thy Bones is in Gutted, so please pick that up if you want to read something that's kind of beautiful and horrible. I also had a story come out in a book called Heroes of the Red Hook Anthology. It's a more diverse take on Red Hook. I have a story in there called Ivan and the Herding Doll, and a sequel to that will be coming out soon in a novella form. And I am currently working on book 2 of the Bone Angel trilogy that I will so finish very, very soon. But the kids honestly go back to school in like 2 weeks, and I'll be able to not have 3 kids at home while trying to, right? There are a whole bunch of things coming out. Oh, this is the main one. I'm like, there was something else that was important. Okay, so I have a limited edition collection of my short stories coming out from Vault Books, Vault Publishing. And they are, Little Dead Red is in there. Joe graciously let us have the rights to do it for limited edition. It's going to be a whole bunch of stories. Big Man Ben, that I said was one of my favorites that nobody ever read, but is fantastic, is in there. A new story. A story that actually has Todd in it when I first met him, called Deadened, I think.
I forgot about that.
And yeah, well, it's in this collection. And one called Ravenous Star's Carnivorous Moon that I love. And it's limited edition. It's numbered. It has interior art. Gorgeous. It's going to have gorgeous artwork. It is leather bound. So go and look at that. It's Vault Books. And I'm really, really super excited. So pre-orders are open for that, and it should be available in January.
Right on.
Very cool.
Right on.
So that's it for our first broadcast, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today and putting up with my shenanigans.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Todd.
Thank you.
You did good. You did
Yeah,
good.
This was good.
Thank you. So, I'm Todd Keisling. This is Beneath the Lake, and we'll see you around.
Bye-bye.
Bye.